When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle first sat down with Oprah Winfrey in March 2021, the world did not just listen, it collectively held its breath. The interview was framed as a moment of truth, a chance for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to finally explain why they had walked away from royal life. But among all the revelations about mental health, media pressure, and palace silence, one claim landed with particular force and lingered far longer than the rest. Meghan revealed that, while she was pregnant, there had been conversations within the royal family about how dark her son Archie's skin might be. The shock was immediate. Headlines exploded. Social media erupted. And a centuries-old institution found itself facing one of the most serious accusations imaginable in the modern age. That moment did not just strain the Sussexes' relationship with the monarchy, it fundamentally reshaped how they were perceived on the global stage. Almost overnight, Harry and Meghan were no longer simply former working royals seeking privacy. They became symbols in a much larger conversation about race, power, and accountability. For their supporters, they were brave whistleblowers willing to challenge an outdated system. For their critics, they were reckless, vague, and deeply unfair. The royal family, bound by tradition and silence, issued a rare and carefully worded response on behalf of the late Queen, acknowledging that the issues raised were concerning while noting that recollections may vary. It was a line that spoke volumes precisely because it said so little. In the months and years that followed, the accusation, whether explicitly stated or not, took on a life of its own. The word racism became inseparable from discussions about Harry and Meghan's departure, even though neither of them had directly named a specific individual or used that exact term during the Oprah interview. Still, the implication was powerful enough that many around the world interpreted it as an indictment of the institution itself. Buckingham Palace felt the tremors immediately, and insiders spoke of profound disquiet behind closed doors. For an institution built on continuity and reputation, the damage was incalculable. Yet outside palace walls, Harry and Meghan's profile only grew. Their decision to speak openly about race and mental health resonated strongly in the United States, where their story was often framed through the lens of social justice. They signed high-profile media deals, launched charitable initiatives, and positioned themselves as advocates for change. In October 2022, that positioning was formally recognized when they were awarded the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Organization's Ripple of Hope Award for fighting what was described as structural racism within the royal family. The award itself was symbolic and controversial in equal measure. Kerry Kennedy, daughter of the late American senator and civil rights icon, praised the couple for their moral courage and their willingness to speak up and change the narrative around racial justice and mental health. In her statement, she described Harry and Meghan as heroic, emphasizing that their decision to tell their story came at great personal cost. To supporters, the honor felt deserved, a validation of the risks they had taken by challenging one of the world's most powerful families. To critics, it felt premature at best and inflammatory at worst, particularly given the lack of specifics around the original allegation. The ceremony itself was lavish, held in New York City in December 2022. Harry and Meghan arrived to flashes of cameras and standing ovations, collecting their award just days before the release of their highly anticipated Netflix docuseries. They shared the spotlight with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, a juxtaposition that raised eyebrows and fueled further debate about whether their struggles belonged in the same category of global human rights battles. Still, the Sussexes stood tall, smiling, seemingly secure in their role as advocates for change. But less than a month later, the narrative took a sharp and unexpected turn. In January 2023, Prince Harry sat down with ITV journalist Tom Bradby, a friend and a familiar face, to promote his memoir, Spare. The interview was meant to clarify, contextualize, and perhaps soften some of the book's more explosive claims. Instead, it reopened wounds that many thought were already raw. When Bradby directly challenged Harry, saying, "You accused members of your family of racism," the response was immediate and defensive. "No, I didn't," Harry snapped back. "The British press said that. Did Meghan ever mention that they're racist?" The moment was jarring. For viewers, it felt like a sudden retreat from the implication that had underpinned so much of the Sussexes' advocacy and public recognition. Harry went on to insist that the comments about Archie's skin color reflected unconscious bias, not racism. The distinction, he argued, was crucial. Racism, in his view, implied intent and malice, whereas unconscious bias was something more subtle, something learned and, importantly, something that could be unlearned. Tom Bradby appeared taken aback, and the reaction among commentators was swift. Many experts argued that Harry was muddying the waters, either misunderstanding the term or attempting to reframe the narrative after the fact. Former BBC royal correspondent Jenny Bond called it unforgivable, saying Harry had effectively hung his family out to dry with an accusation that he now seemed to be walking back. Royal biographer Robert Jobson went further, suggesting that Harry and Meghan should return the Ripple of Hope Award if they no longer stood by the implication of racism that had helped earn it. Others focused on the inconsistency. ITV News royal editor Chris Shipp pointed out that while Harry was technically correct in saying they had not used the word racist during the Oprah interview, they had also made no effort to correct the widespread interpretation that followed. In fact, Harry had previously criticized the royal family for failing to challenge damaging narratives in the media. Yet here he was, accused of doing precisely the same thing. The controversy raised uncomfortable questions. If the issue was unconscious bias rather than racism, did the award for fighting structural racism still feel justified? Was this a matter of semantics, or did it fundamentally change the nature of the claim? For some supporters, Harry's explanation added nuance and depth to the conversation, highlighting the complexity of prejudice and the importance of growth. For critics, it looked like backtracking under pressure, a convenient reframing once the accusation had already done its damage. Harry, for his part, doubled down on the distinction. During the ITV interview, when asked whether he would describe the comments about Archie's skin color as essentially racist, he replied that he wouldn't, not having lived within that family. But he continued to argue that unconscious bias, if left unchallenged, could evolve into racism. Once acknowledged, he said, it offered an opportunity to learn and grow, to become part of the solution rather than the problem. It was a carefully constructed argument, one that positioned him not as an accuser, but as a reformer. He also accused Buckingham Palace of failing to follow through on promises made in the wake of the Oprah interview, including appointing a so-called diversity tsar. In his telling, the real tragedy was a missed opportunity, a chance for the monarchy to confront uncomfortable truths and modernize in a meaningful way. He echoed these sentiments in a later appearance on Good Morning America, where he said he genuinely believed there was a place for the British monarchy in the 21st century, just not in its current form. The idea of modernization became central to Harry's argument. He spoke openly about his own journey in confronting unconscious bias, suggesting that the same process could benefit the institution he was born into. He stressed again that he was not calling the family racist, but warning that unexamined bias could, over time, become something darker. For Harry, the conversation was not about blame, but about accountability and evolution. Still, the damage had been done. To the royal family, the distinction between racism and unconscious bias may have felt academic, especially given the global fallout from the original revelation. To Meghan's critics, the shifting language reinforced doubts about credibility. And to supporters, it highlighted the impossibility of having a nuanced conversation in a media environment hungry for absolutes. At the heart of it all lies a profound contradiction. Harry and Meghan were honored for standing up against what was widely understood to be racism within the royal family, yet Harry later insisted he never made that accusation. The gap between those two positions is where the controversy lives and breathes. It is a space filled with interpretation, emotion, and unresolved tension, reflecting the broader challenges of discussing race in public life. Whether the Ripple of Hope Award felt justified depends largely on where one stands. For some, the Sussexes' willingness to speak openly about bias, mental health, and institutional failure was enough. For others, the lack of clarity and subsequent backtracking undermined the very foundation of that recognition. What cannot be denied is that the episode cemented Harry and Meghan's transformation from royal insiders to global advocates, a role that comes with both influence and scrutiny. Years on, the story continues to divide opinion, serving as a reminder that words, once spoken, cannot be neatly contained. In trying to redefine what they meant, Harry and Meghan reignited a debate that shows no sign of fading, about truth, responsibility, and the cost of speaking out against power.